On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected.
Thank you to all our amazing channel members for your generous support.
Charles Manson died in 2017 from natural causes after decades spent in prison, a quiet and anticlimactic end that starkly contrasted with the terror and chaos he orchestrated in the late 1960s. His death from complications related to illness highlighted the reality that even the most infamous figures, those who once commanded violent devotion and national fear, ultimately succumbed to the same fragile human limits as everyone else. In many ways, his passing reflected the era's ongoing confrontation with the counterculture's darker undercurrents and the enduring societal fascination with cults, manipulation, and the psychology of extremism. Manson's notoriety stemmed not only from the brutality of the murders committed by his followers, but from the symbolic rupture they represented in American culture. His crimes shattered the idealism of the 1960s, exposing how movements seeking freedom and enlightenment could be twisted by charismatic exploitation. By the time of his death, he had long been a symbol rather than a man, an image of corrupted countercultural rebellion, amplified through decades of documentaries, books, and retellings. When news of his death broke, public reaction mixed morbid curiosity with a sense of historical closure. For many, it marked the end of a lingering thread from one of the most haunting chapters of modern American history. His passing did not shift the trajectory of history in the immediate sense, yet it reignited conversations about criminal psychology, cult dynamics, and the ways society mythologizes violence. In death, Manson's legend did not grow in admiration, but in analytical weight. Criminologists, historians, and cultural critics revisited the conditions that allowed him to rise, offering deeper insight into societal vulnerabilities during times of upheaval. His death became another chapter in the long examination of how ordinary individuals can be manipulated into extraordinary violence. The way Manson is remembered reveals much about humanity's complex relationship with power and memory. Unlike heroic or cultural icons, his commemoration is rooted in caution rather than celebration. Through films, academic studies, museum exhibits, and true crime literature, society immortalizes him not as a figure of admiration, but as a continuing warning about the dangers of unchecked charisma, ideological manipulation, and the human search for belonging in unstable times. His legacy endures as a reminder that mortality equalizes all, but memory preserves lessons, shaping how future generations understand the darker potentials within human influence and devotion. Rosalynn Carter died in 2023 of natural causes, leaving behind a legacy defined not by political power alone, but by her unwavering commitment to humanitarian service. Her passing came at a moment when American society was grappling with widening political polarization and growing concerns about mental health, issues she had championed for decades. In many ways, the circumstances of her death, peaceful and surrounded by family, reflected the quiet resilience and generosity that characterized her public life. She had long embodied the belief that public service extended far beyond the walls of the White House, and her final years continued to affirm that devotion. The immediate response to her death was a nationwide acknowledgement of the depth of her influence. While often introduced as a First Lady, Rosalynn had throughout her life transcended the ceremonial expectations of that role. She reshaped the public conversation around caregiving, mental health reform, and community service, working alongside her husband through initiatives like the Carter Center. Her passing triggered a renewed appreciation for her decades of advocacy, prompting political leaders, activists, and citizens to reflect on the progress and challenges that remained in the causes she championed. In this sense, her death amplified her legacy by bringing her life's work back into urgent public focus. Rosalynn Carter's impact did not shift the global trajectory of history in a dramatic, immediate sense, but her influence was cumulative, woven into the ongoing efforts toward peace, human rights, and compassionate support systems. Her death encouraged a collective reconsideration of how societies care for the vulnerable, linking her values to contemporary struggles for accessible health care, disability rights, and conflict resolution. Her departure also illuminates broader truths about humanity's relationship to mortality and memory. Figures like Rosalynn Carter are immortalized not through grandeur or tragedy, but through the quiet endurance of their values. Memorial services, museum tributes, and the continued work of the Carter Center serve as living commemorations, transforming her life into an active legacy rather than a static memory. Through biographies, documentaries, and public remembrance, she becomes part of a cultural narrative that celebrates empathy as a form of power. In the end, her death reveals how some legacies grow not from dramatic endings, but from lives lived with purpose, lives that inspire societies to carry forward the work left unfinished. Jana Novotná died in 2017 after a private battle with cancer, a natural yet deeply poignant end for an athlete remembered as much for her perseverance as for her skill. Her passing reflected the quiet dignity with which she had always carried herself, both in victory and in heartbreak. In an era when professional sports were becoming increasingly commercial, physically punishing, and emotionally exposed, her death reminded the world of the vulnerability behind the public excellence of elite athletes. The woman known for her resilience, especially after her famously tearful Wimbledon loss in the early 1990s and her triumphant comeback to finally win the title in 1998, left the world in a manner that echoed the grace she embodied throughout her career. The immediate response to her passing was one of collective mourning within the global tennis community. Former competitors, protégés, and fans celebrated her sportsmanship, her gentle professionalism, and the inspiration she gave to generations of players. Her death amplified her legend, not by altering the course of tennis history in a dramatic way, but by renewing appreciation for the emotional heart of the sport, its stories of perseverance, personal evolution, and human connection. She became a symbol of how an athlete's legacy can rest not only on trophies, but on the emotional resonance of their journey. In a broader sense, her passing illuminated the shifting narrative around women in sports. At a time when conversations about equal recognition, mental health, and athlete well-being were increasingly prominent, the memory of her vulnerability and her eventual triumph gained new relevance. The image of her being comforted by the Duchess of Kent after her loss became an emblem of grace amid struggle, a reminder that public heartbreak can also forge enduring connections. Reflecting on her departure reveals how deeply we rely on athletes to embody ideals of determination and humility. We immortalize figures like Jana Novotná through highlight reels, documentary retellings, Hall of Fame inductions, and the quiet retelling of their most human moments. Her story persists because it captures something universal: the courage to rise after falling, the acceptance of impermanence, and the beauty of finding redemption on one's own terms. Her death, gentle and dignified, reinforces an enduring truth: that the legacies we cherish most are those that remind us how to persist with grace. Diane Varsi died in 1992 of respiratory failure, a natural yet somber end to a life marked by artistic intensity and emotional sensitivity. Her passing reflected not only the fragility of the human body, but also the cost of a Hollywood era that often demanded more than its young stars could bear. Varsi had burst into fame in the late 1950s with a raw, vulnerable presence that set her apart, earning acclaim for Peyton Place and later Wild in the Streets. Yet she famously walked away from the film industry at the height of her success, disillusioned by its pressures. Her death, coming after years spent largely outside the public eye, echoed the quiet defiance that had shaped her career, an insistence on preserving her inner life in a world that demanded spectacle. The immediate consequences of her passing were smaller than those that followed the loss of more mainstream stars. Yet, within artistic circles, her death reignited conversations about the emotional toll of Hollywood's golden age. Former collaborators and admirers reflected on her talent and the unusual courage she showed by stepping away. Her departure did not dramatically shift film history, but it sharpened understanding of a generation of performers who struggled against a system built on confinement, studio contracts, intense publicity scrutiny, and rigid notions of femininity. In that sense, her death subtly amplified her legend as an emblem of resistance, a reminder of those artists who chose authenticity over fame. Her story resonates today in an era increasingly attentive to mental health, personal autonomy, and the hidden burdens carried by creative individuals. The contrast between her early radiance and later retreat underscores enduring tensions between public adoration and private well-being. Her life invites a reconsideration of what it means to succeed and what it means to survive in industries that reward emotional exposure but offer little protection. In remembering Diane Varsi, we uncover deeper truths about humanity's relationship with mortality and memory. We immortalize figures like her through restored film prints, retrospective articles, and the quiet reverence of cinephiles who recognize her as a singular presence. Art preserves the sincerity she brought to the screen. Biography preserves the struggle behind it. Her death reminds us that legacy is not only built on fame, but on the courage to seek one's own path, even at the cost of disappearing from view. Hank von Helvete died in 2021 of natural causes connected to long-standing health struggles, a quiet end that contrasted sharply with the chaotic theatrical world he helped shape as the frontman of Turbonegro. His death reflected the tension of an era when alternative culture was both celebrated and consumed, leaving many artists navigating the pressures of fame, addiction, and reinvention. Known for his electrifying stage presence, sharp wit, and the provocative humor of deathpunk, he embodied a generation of performers who pushed boundaries while privately wrestling with the cost of that intensity. The immediate aftermath of his passing brought an outpouring of grief from fans, fellow musicians, and cultural commentators across Europe and the U.S. His death did not alter the trajectory of global music history in a sweeping sense, yet it unmistakably amplified the mythology surrounding Turbonegro and the subcultures they inspired. For many, his voice had been synonymous with the band's late 1990s resurgence, particularly during the release of Apocalypse Dudes, which became a defining album in the punk and alternative scenes. His absence forced listeners to revisit the complexities of his persona, both the exuberant frontman and the vulnerable individual behind the makeup and denim. His passing also underscored the persistent challenges faced by artists navigating addiction and mental health concerns, issues often romanticized or overshadowed within rock culture. In an era increasingly aware of these struggles, Hank's story gained new resonance. His journey through recovery, relapse, personal reinvention, and eventual stability became part of a broader conversation about how society supports or fails to support its most creative and unconventional voices. Reflecting on his death reveals enduring truths about how we remember those who live at the edge of cultural expression. Humanity's relationship with mortality is often shaped by the narratives we craft around those who defy norms, and Hank became part of that tradition. We immortalize figures like him through tribute concerts, fan art, documentaries, and the continued circulation of their music. Online communities preserve his interviews, his humor, and his candid reflections on life after fame, transforming him into a symbol of resilience as much as rebellion. In the end, his legacy endures because it captures a universal tension, the desire to break boundaries while searching for peace. His death reminds us that behind cultural icons stand human beings, and memory becomes a bridge that honors both the myth and the man. Reggie Nalder died in 1991 from natural causes, a quiet and understated passing that contrasted sharply with the sinister presence he projected throughout his long career. Known for his chilling performances in films such as The Man Who Knew Too Much and the television adaptation of Salem's Lot, Nalder built a legacy on embodying menace, his distinctive features and restrained acting style creating villains who lingered in the imagination long after the credits rolled. His death reflected the quieter side of an era when Hollywood transitioned from the old studio system to more international character-driven cinema, a shift that allowed actors like him to find unique niches but often left them under-recognized. The immediate consequences of his passing were modest but meaningful within the horror and thriller communities. Filmmakers, genre scholars, and longtime fans revisited his performances, noting how his understated approach influenced later generations of character actors. Though he was never a household name, his death amplified an appreciation for the unsung craftsmen of mid-20th century cinema, the performers whose contributions shaped tone and atmosphere more than headline fame. In this sense, Nalder's departure helped solidify his status as a cult figure, someone whose career gained greater clarity and reverence only in retrospect. His passing also highlighted the shifting values of the era. By the early 1990s, cinema was moving rapidly towards spectacle and larger-than-life heroes, leaving behind the subtler, suspense-driven storytelling that had defined much of Nalder's work. His death reminded audiences of a time when fear was built on quiet tension rather than digital effects, when villains derived their power from presence rather than scale. It was a moment that invited reflection on how film and the cultural anxieties it expresses evolves with each generation. In contemplating his death, we see humanity's complex relationship with memory and the shadows cast by those who play its darker roles. We immortalize figures like Nalder not through grand statues or national memorials, but through restored film prints, genre retrospectives, and the enduring loyalty of horror fans who recognize the artistry in his performances. Literature on cult cinema continues to analyze his impact, while online communities preserve his scenes and interviews. His legacy endures because he represented the indispensable, yet often overlooked artisans of film, those who shape stories not through celebrity, but through the unforgettable impressions they leave behind. Franz Schubert died in 1828 from complications related to illness, likely typhoid fever or syphilis, at the young age of 31. His death reflected both the fragility of life in early 19th century Vienna and the challenges faced by artists in an era when patronage and public recognition were often inconsistent and fleeting. Despite being extraordinarily prolific, composing over 600 vocal works, symphonies, chamber music, and piano pieces, Schubert struggled for financial stability and public acclaim during his lifetime, a common reality for many creative figures of his period. His passing underscored the precariousness of artistic life in an age before modern medicine and before composers could rely on widespread public concert culture or recorded music to secure fame. The immediate consequences of his death were a mixture of sorrow and quiet acknowledgement among peers and students. While Schubert's music was admired in certain circles, he was not widely celebrated at the time, and much of his genius became fully appreciated posthumously. The publication of his works and the performances of his songs in the decades following his death amplified his legend, transforming him into a central figure of the Romantic era. Schubert's lyrical mastery, harmonic innovation, and emotional depth came to define the Viennese style of the early 19th century, influencing contemporaries and shaping the trajectory of Western classical music. His death also highlights the era's evolving values regarding artistic genius. In a society increasingly attentive to personal expression, emotional authenticity, and the romantic ideal of the artist as a solitary, suffering figure, Schubert's struggles and early death became emblematic of these cultural narratives. The poignancy of his truncated life added a layer of myth to his legacy, emphasizing both the brilliance and the vulnerability of creative human endeavor. Reflecting on his passing reveals enduring truths about humanity's relationship with mortality, memory, and cultural legacy. Schubert is immortalized not only through his scores and performances, but through literature, musicology, and ongoing reinterpretation by generations of musicians. Concerts, recordings, and scholarly works preserve his voice, allowing audiences to connect with a life that ended prematurely, yet continues to resonate profoundly. His legacy illustrates how art transforms mortality into enduring presence, offering a bridge between ephemeral human life and the timelessness of creativity, emotion, and cultural memory.